We shall start our session today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin. But before that, let me do some housekeeping notes to ensure that this virtual event can run smoothly. First, I would like to remind those who are on camera to dress appropriately. You are allowed to turn off your camera. However, please do not forget to turn it on at the end of the session for the photography session. Second, please prepare your questions and you may raise the question in the chat box and our speaker will answer them at the end of the session. Inshallah, without further ado, let us start our session today. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang berbahagia, Profesor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, Dean Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kulliyah of Islamic Real Knowledge and Human Sciences. Yang berbahagia, our speaker, Assistant Professor Dr. Megawati Binti Morris, Deputy Deans, Deputy Director, Heads of Department, Heads of Research, Professors, Associate Professors, Doctors, Academic Members, and last but not least, our young graduates and students. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. We are able to convene this morning to participate in Hadisus Sobah program organized by the Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kulliyah of Islamic Real Knowledge and Human Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia. My name is Siti Hilwanis binti Hashim. Currently, I'm a master student in Fiqh and Usul Fiqh, and I'm also the chairperson of Da'wah and Community Engagement Bureau of the Real Knowledge and Human Sciences Graduate Society, RESOC, and it is an honor to be the MC for today's session. And on behalf of the Kulliyah, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Before we go further, let us begin our program today with the recitation of Umakitab Al-Fatiha. Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Before I pass this session to our speaker, let's welcome Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, Dean of Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kulliyah of Islamic Real Knowledge and Human Sciences to deliver his welcoming remarks. Falyatafaddal mashkura.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin. Thank you, Sister Siti Hilwanis, for emceeing the Hadisus Sobah for today. Deputy Deans, Heads of Department, Professors, Academic Members, Students, and most importantly, the speaker for today's Hadisus Sobah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very pleasant morning to all of you. Thank you to all of you for joining this session. This is a very important session, at least to me, because the topic is so very relevant, not only to the teaching and learning processes, being academics or being students, but being IUM knowledge workers or IUM community as well. Why do I say so? We know that we joined this university because of the missions, and the missions in this kulliyah especially focuses on Islamization, integration, internationalization, relevantization, comprehensive excellence. So what do we want to Islamize? What do we want to relevantize? What do we want to integrate? Right? So we want to integrate knowledge. We want to Islamize knowledge. We want to relevantize knowledge. But before we could do that, we have to know the property of knowledge. What is there in the knowledge? And I thank Dr. Megawati Morris because today she is going to help us to understand the property of knowledge. We call it EOT now, EOT, Epistemology, Ontology, Zoology, and Theology. I believe these are the keys for us to do Islamization, right? So what is there to Islamize? We have to understand the epistemology. What is there to Islamize? We have to know the ontology. What is there to relevantize? What is there to integrate, and so on and so forth? We have to know the properties of those knowledge. Right? So whether you are students, you are lecturers, I think these keys are important. Right? We need to have these keys so that Islamization, integration, relevantization can be informed by these properties of knowledge. I hope I'm correct in explaining this, Dr. Megawati, and I look forward to listening and learning more from you. And as the topic suggests, this is only an introduction, so we hope that we can have series of e-oat discussion. All right, so with that, I thank you very much, all audience. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Shukran, for such meaningful and heartwarming message. Therefore, without further ado, let me briefly introduce our speaker today. Her full name is Assistant Professor Dr. Megawati binti Modis from the Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion, and she is also a member of Academia.edu and Center for AI Innovation. And among her latest research projects in 2021 is about Ibn Arabi's concept of dreams. Before I hand over the session to Assistant Professor Dr. Megawati binti Modis, let me inform that she will be delivering her talk for 30 minutes and we will open the Q&A session for 15 minutes. You are welcome to share your questions in the chat box. So now, without further ado, I welcome Assistant Professor Dr. Megawati binti Modis to deliver her talk. Falyatafaddal mashkura.
Thank you very much, Sister Siti Hilwanis. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First and foremost, I would like to thank our respected Dean, Prof. Shukran, and members of the Deanery for inviting me to give this talk this morning, and also for attending it early in the morning. I also would like to welcome and thank the other academic members, the administrative staff, and students who are also attending this talk. I will share the screen now. All right, the title of the talk has been chosen by the Dean himself. Actually, I have given this talk before in a workshop, but I think this is just an introduction or an overview, and the Dean has also added teleology, all right, into the topic. So, as you can see, the topic, with all these terminologies, and it's basically a very huge and complex topic, and it's you would say we will not do justice to the topic in 30 minutes, but like the Dean mentioned just now, that there will be a series of talks which I'm sure all the other academic members will also be involved. So the title is the Epistemology, Ontology, Axiology, and Theology of Knowledge, and overview. All right, basically the aims and objectives, all right, of giving this talk, I would like, and this is basically the content of the talk, I would like that we will have understanding of the principles of epistemology, ontology, axiology, and teleology in knowledge, and like, we should use the short form because it's a mouthful to say, EOT, all right? I was thinking how to pronounce it. So just now our dean mentioned EOT, all right? Make up the branches of philosophy in both Islamic and Western philosophy. So EOT are relevant to other branches of knowledge. For example, social and human sciences, since they are based on the principles of EOT. So that's why this, what do you call this EOT, the principles, all right, are basically the basis or the foundations, all right, the philosophical foundations of the other branches of knowledge, including social and human sciences. So as academicians and educators, we should understand and attempt to apply principles of EOT in the courses we teach. So since this epistemology, ontology, axiology, and theology, they are branches of philosophy, and they make up the foundations of the other branches of knowledge. So we will start with what is philosophy, the definitions and meanings of philosophy. So we always will start with definition, and with etymology, basically the origin of the word. It originated from Greek philo and sophia, which basically is love of wisdom. So philosophy also means love of truth. All right, so that is basically, you know, what philosophy is trying to achieve, truth. And love of goodness, because philosophy is just not theoretical, but it's also practical. The end is that we realize that truth. So it's also love of goodness. All right. So, and of course, it's an intellectual activity which tries to solve philosophical problems. So this it studies fundamental issues, all right, which are universal, comprehensive, which requires deep thinking and contemplation. So for example, what are the questions that philosophy tries to answer, investigate, and answer? Is what's the meaning of existence, wujud? What is the meaning of life, hayat? So to explain concepts, mafhum, all right, and their significance to enable human beings to understand. I think the screen is, you know, how do the pictures block the screen. Maybe I should just go for the small screen. All right, so although philosophy is universal, all right, because philosophy is the foundation of all knowledge, and Aristotle has called it first philosophy, or which is metaphysics. We will speak about that, and our Islamic philosophers like Al-Kindi has called it Al-Falsafatul Ula. All right. So although philosophy is universal, but it also has a particular, specific, or contextualized aspect. And this is what is relevant to us. It deals with knowledge that can be applied and contextualized. Then second, all right, it focuses on life, very relevant to us as human beings. Philosophy aims to give direction on how to live a good life, that is to give purpose to life. For example, all right, the purpose of life, most Islamic philosophers say, is to attain happiness, as-sa'adah. But of course, you know, what is the meaning of happiness? What constitutes happiness? All right, it differs from different Western tradition, from the Islamic tradition. Basically, in the Islamic tradition, as-sa'adah is the as-sa'adah al-abadiyah, all right, the eternal happiness, or the sa'ada ukhrawiyah, the other world happiness, all right. So is also related to religion as religious philosophy, like for example, the Islamic philosophy, which also aims to bring about a good life, a life of a virtuous person, you know. So akhlaq is what do you call it, a very important component, all right, in philosophy, and how to achieve happiness. So the focus is on the human being and humanity, al-insan wa insaniyah. So it's related to natural philosophy. For example, what's the nature or attributes of the natural world, alam tabi. And it is related to metaphysics, all right. This word, you know, we are always scared of this word metaphysics, because meta means beyond, right? So what is this? You know, what does it mean? What knowledge does it represent? So metaphysics is a branch of philosophy which deals with questions on what is reality, hakika, all right, of man, human being, and the natural world. So the purpose of philosophical knowledge is to solve philosophical and intellectual issues, all right. And basically we are, you know, in the university to solve issues, all right. Here it's specifically philosophical, because our contention is that it is the foundation, all right, of all knowledge, and we believe that in relation to us, it is the Islamic philosophy, all right. Although when we discuss here, it's general, all right, philosophy, because it is a universal subject. But later I will just go through some of the important features of Islamic philosophy, because Islamic philosophy also has its particular aspects. So the purpose of philosophy to solve philosophical and intellectual issues. So what are the forms of solution? And in philosophy, we use rational arguments and logic. So, and therefore we go to the types of philosophy. So there's the theoretical and the practical. So theoretical discusses on the nature of existence, deals with fundamental and general questions. For example, you know, metaphysics, logic, epistemology. And the second type of philosophy is practical, the fields of philosophy where the results of their philosophical discussion can be used in specific disciplines. For example, philosophy of politics, economics, sociology, psychology, social philosophy, because all these disciplines have philosophical foundations, which sometimes we do not emphasize, because we only speak about history, the historical development of the discipline, or, you know, we talk about the characteristics, we talk about the features, we talk about the institutions, but we do not start with the philosophical foundations. So the philosophical foundations first is epistemology. All right. What is epistemology? It's the theoretical study of knowledge. So basically, you know, it is we are studying about knowledge. We're studying about what are the characteristics of knowledge in epistemology, what are the conditions, what are the limitations of knowledge. Usually they will say epistemology is asking the question, how do you know what you know? All right. So, and this epistemology is this basically is the concept of knowledge, all right, as justified through belief. So there are three necessary and sufficient conditions to meet this justified through belief. First is that we believe in what we hold and believe as knowledge. All right, that what we believe in what we hold and believe as knowledge. All right, so we must believe in the knowledge. All right, and what we believe in all right, that knowledge must be true. Our belief must have justifications or a basis. So a belief which is justified about something true, a belief which is justified about something true, all right, that epistemology deals with that. So hence, it is not blind belief. And definitely, all right, these principles of epistemology, is very relevant to our courses, all right, in relation to the Islamic worldview, all right, we must believe what we believe it to be is that knowledge must be true and it must be justifiable. So it is not blind, all right, and as we can, that's the thing that we can discuss, and basically all of us, all right, the kuliah, can what do you call that, discuss about the courses that are taught, all right, in relation to, like Prof. Shukran said, the aim of integration, Islamization, and relevantization, all right. So it's like going back to the basic, all right, when we offer, teach, and learn the courses. So there are two streams in theory of knowledge, and we always talk about, empiricism, that science, all right, modern science is very empirical in nature. So what is empiricism? The other, of course, is rationalism. So empiricism's true knowledge is achieved or produced and validated from the five senses, all right, or the five channels of sensation, which are sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. So for the empiricists, the five senses is the source of true knowledge, all right. So empiricists are told that humans are born without any knowledge. They are like empty slates, the tabula rasa. So only with exposure to the external world, which are perceived by the senses, that knowledge arises in humans about their surroundings. Like, a toddler goes out and all is really absorbing all the knowledge when he or she sees the mother, the father, the tree, the ball. So for the empiricist, knowledge is attained through the senses, all right, the five senses. While the rationalists, all right, rationalism, true knowledge is produced from the use of our rational intellect or our intelligence. So nowadays they just call mind, or in fact worse, now they have reduced it to just brain, which is physical. But basically the term, all right, in traditional philosophy, which Islamic philosophy falls under, is rational intellect is akal, all right, in the Arabic term, and in the term used in our tradition, all right, and we know that intellect is not very much used now, all right. So rationality is the basis for the production and justification of true knowledge, and they argue that our senses can lie, all right. This is the rationalist view. They say that it is, knowledge that are produced from our intellect, because our senses can lie. What our senses perceive may not correspond with reality. For example, the crooked spoon in a glass of water. All right, the spoon is not crooked, but when we put in the water, we see that it is crooked. So therefore, our eyes see that the spoon is crooked. So therefore, the rationalists say that our senses do lie. All right, for example, if we are drinking something sweet, but if we have cough, or we have flu, that sweet, that something sweet, all right, tastes bitter. So it doesn't correspond with reality, all right, under all conditions. So rationalists uphold that we can refute the errors in a theory and put forward a theory which is true by using rational arguments. So basically, this is what's happening in in philosophy, especially in the Western world, but not in Islamic philosophy. All right, but in the Western world, they go from one philosophical system or from one ideology to another, because they refute one theory and produce another theory. All right, So through rational arguments alone. So theories of knowledge influence the production of knowledge, such as in the natural sciences and even the social sciences. All right, so the next branch of knowledge is ontology. All right, this ontology is the philosophical study of the nature of being, becoming, existence, wujud, all right, in the Islamic philosophy, or reality, hakikat. It is part of the major branch of philosophy known as metaphysics. It deals with questions about existence, wujud, what are the attributes of existence, what things exist, all right, the existence or the mawjudat, or can be said to exist. All right, here is what, in ontology, all right, that we study about the existence of God, right, the existence of human beings. All right, the concept is the same, existence, but definitely the existence of God is different from the existence of human beings or the creation. So in Islamic philosophy, we refer to the existence of God as absolute or mutlak, and or necessary. All right, wajibul wujud, that's the term philosophers and also other Muslim scholars like Mutakalimun use wajibul wujud, all right, necessary existence. And for creation, all right, makhluk, contingent existence, all right, mumkin al-wujud. So basically, in Islamic philosophy, it deals with religion, all right, with akidah, and of course, the fundamental is the concept of tawheed, but basically the terms are different, all right? So since ontology as the study of the nature of being is categorized under metaphysics, we will look at it under the general domain of metaphysics. So what is metaphysics? All right, I used to be scared of the term. What is this metaphysics? And I know when I teach students, all right, they are very scared of this term because, we are used to physics, all right, the physical world. Metaphysics, beyond or after, all right, meta meaning beyond or after, because basically the term from Aristotle. Aristotle wrote his book on physics, and after physics, he wrote on metaphysics. So physics relate to the matters of or the world, all right, physical world, which are physical or material. So metaphysics is beyond that world. All right, I will go more in depth about that later. So two meanings related to the term metaphysics. One is the philosophical aspect, and the second related to religion and belief system. Of course, in modern Western philosophy now, they do not talk about the second aspect, which is related to religion, all right, or any belief system. So the philosophy, we go to the philosophical aspect. And of course, all this goes back to Greek philosophy. And I think this is what we Muslims are afraid of, because it goes back to Greek philosophy. But as we said, all right, the Islamic philosophers Islamized this Greek philosophy. So Islamization, began, way back then when Muslims were studying other disciplines. All right, it's not that the Indians or the Chinese or the other civilizations did not have a philosophy, but why we took or were influenced by Greek philosophy is because of the Islam too, because of the encounter we had, all right, with the Hellenistic or the Greek civilization, especially when Alexandria fell to the Muslims, when before that it was a Greek milieu, all right, in terms of the intellectual and cultural environment. So when you talk about the philosophical aspect of metaphysics, it is the study of the most abstract and most general level of a thing. All right, so like we said, philosophy talks about universal concepts, and therefore you talk about very fundamental things. So when you talk about, for example, a rose, We just talk about the rose as a substance, minus the smell of the rose, minus the color of the rose. So what we, the shape, it is a rose per se, all right, and in itself. So therefore, this is what is called substance, all right, in philosophy, all right, which is in Greek, of course, it's a substance, but in Islamic philosophy, it's called as jawhar, all right, and it's what we look at is just the matter and the form. For example, if I take the example of a chair, so what is the matter of the chair is that what is it made of? Wood, for example, and the form, all right, is basically the structure, all right, of the chair, which allows it to fulfill its final cause, all right, which is to sit on. So basically that's the form, all right, matter and form. So a lot of people, just reduce it to shape, but actually it's not shape, all right, it's the form of the chair, meaning, it's like a structure which allows people to sit, because the definition of a chair is to sit on, all right. This is just a very simple example. Then metaphysics, as it relates to religion or belief system, it refers to phenomena beyond the physical world, such as God's existence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wujud, life after death, all right, heaven and hell. So we study this also in philosophy, in Islamic philosophy, for example. So it relates to things which cannot be verified with our senses, but can be verified by other means, such as wahi, revelation, and direct experience. All right, this term sometimes, we refer to as intuition, or what do you call ilham, or the Sufis use kashaf, or ilmudhawq. So it's direct experience. There are two theories which discuss on the reality of existence. One of materialism, that means real existence is material or physical. Things which have real existence are divided into two. Things which are made up of matters, such as chair, tree, river, stone. And second, things which are not material, such as the ideas in our mind. All right. So materialism believes in the existence of material things, and also immaterial things like ideas. So for materialists, ideas do not have their own reality, but they depend on something material, such as the brain. The mind is the effect of the physical movement in the brain. So they reject the existence of things which are not material. So regarding things apart from ideas, such as beliefs in the invisible world, like in Islamic philosophy, we also talk about the alamul ghaib, the invisible world, not only just the alamul shahada, all right, the visible world. So here we talk about the ruh, the malaika, etc. They say these things in reality do not exist, but these are the materialists. We are not materialists only, all right, as we will see later. We are both materialists and in using the Western philosophy jargon, of course, but in Islamic tradition, we use the term the invisible and the visible, shahada and ghaib. So idealism, second, component is real existence is mental, ideal, or spiritual in nature. So we cannot know the matter which is beyond the reach of our senses in a direct way, but we only have a sensation or an image of the matter in our mind. So the sensation or image is mental and not physical. All right. So they uphold that only the mental world exists and the physical world cannot be known directly. So idealism allows for the belief of spirituality, since it considers reality is not physical in nature, but other than physical. So hence concepts such as belief in soul, spirit, etc., found in religion can be accepted, since they are not physical, but about which we can understand with our mind, and which we connect with something which is spiritual and not material in nature. All right, so this is the problem of Western philosophy. All right, they have this categorization or dichotomy between materialism and idealism. All right, we don't have that issue in Islamic philosophy. All right, because as we see, relationship between metaphysics and religion, which Islamic philosophy basically focuses on. Because in religion, for example, in Islam, because we are talking about other religious philosophical systems also, reality is not limited to material things, which can be known through rational and empirical methods. But reality relates to things which are not material, such as soul and spirit, which exist in our body, the existence of angels, jinn, for example. From a religious perspective, then, reality is not limited to either material things or spiritual things, but to both. So hence religion, all right, encompasses both material and spiritual reality. So in terms of knowledge, it is not limited to rationalism and empiricism only. All right, so that is another false notion. All right, what do you call false notion? You know that Muslim philosophers or Islamic philosophers, just use rational arguments. All right, but as we can see, all right, we use, of course, when you talk about spiritual realities, all right, the main authority is, of course, the Quran and Hadith. All right, and the philosophers just rationalize, all right, rationalize what is contained in the Quran, all right, based on the verses. So basically, the Islamic philosophers are also mufassirun, interpreters. So here I will not go into it. So what are the metaphysical systems related to religion, and this is very, very relevant for our kuliah. All right, for example, when you talk about atheism, all right, in terms of social philosophy, agnosticism, theism, and of course, Tawhid, polytheism. So that is, we will have to know the principles of metaphysics, all right, so that we can critique or try to Islamize these systems that which we are teaching, for example, atheism, agnosticism. And then, of course, because of, I'm not sure, maybe short of time, axiology, all right, from the Greek axios and logos, worthy plus science, means basically is theory of value, the philosophical study of goodness or values. So here, it has expanded the meaning of the term value to relate to especially ethics, morality. All right, then we also talk about the value of art, the value of science, the value in economics, the value, what are, for example, value in politics, all the concepts, different concepts and institutions. All right, so I think we just go to this. All right, there are two types or basic types of values: instrumental, what is good as a means, all right, and intrinsic, what is good as an end. All right, the two types of values. So many things in life are good in both senses. For example, health, knowledge, and virtue. And for example, in Islamic philosophy, knowledge, all right, ilm, is good, all right, it has instrumental good, meaning it is good as a means, because knowledge, all right, shows us the wasila, the way, all right, to happiness, the way to the successful life, good, what do you call success, all right, in the hereafter. So with knowledge, all right, knowledge is an instrument, has an instrumental goodness, because it is not valued for itself, but as a means. But it also has intrinsic value, because knowledge is good in itself, binafsihi. All right, because why it is intrinsic? Because, for example, we give the example, all right, in Islamic philosophy, of course, knowledge, because knowledge gives us knowledge of reality, all right, or knowledge gives things, knowledge is that we know or see things as they are in themselves. All right, Imam Al-Ghazali says, all right, he, for example, he defined knowledge as an end in itself, in the sense that knowledge is a description, all right, of the perfection of Allah Ta'ala. So that is knowledge, the intrinsic value of knowledge. And like he says, knowledge is about allowing us to see things as they really are. We are not fooled, we are not deceived, we are not veiled from what is the truth. All right, so that is in terms of the value. Okay, and so when we teach all these other courses, all right, when we teach sociology or political science, besides studying, for example, the concepts, all right, or the different concepts, the institution, basically we have to start from the foundation. All right, what is the value of politics? So we go to political philosophy, right? So you see, it makes us go back to fundamentals or foundation. And then we can go to the practical philosophy in terms of how it relates to the subject matter, or the, what do you call that, itself. So I won't go into this talking about value is whether, it is good, all right, because human beings find it has value, or human beings find it having value because of its objectivity, all right, that it is good in itself, it has value in itself. All right, so Western ethics talk about this deontological and teleological question. So, but for us Muslims, all right, it encompasses both. All right, the Western philosophy, is always, they are always talking in terms, they are always in contention. Materialists, empiricists, all right, what do you call, physical, spiritual, idealists, what do you call, realists, and then value. All right, for example, in ethics, utilitarian, and what do you call, utilitarian as in teleological, and then Kantian ethics as in deontological. All right, so but in Islamic philosophy, because we will study, and therefore if philosophy, all right, from our Islamic perspective is the foundation, then we have this, unity. We can see the sciences, all right, the human sciences, all right, in unity. Of course, the subject, the course itself, because now we look at all the courses from a Western perspective, right? But of course, in UIA, the lecturers do give the Islamic perspective. But for example, in other universities where they just teach the secular aspects of the sciences, or because sciences, the prevalent, all right, the prevalent knowledge, all right, is Western and modern Western. So this is where, where this comes in, all right. This is the philosophy, what do you call, the philosophical principles interacting, all right, with which is all these terms, epistemology, axiology, all right, these are philosophical terms. And most of the sciences, all right, most of the humanities or the social sciences in the West, they are founded on these philosophical foundations of axiology, epistemology, teleology, and all that. But so is Islam, all right, but we cannot, so how do we engage, how do we encounter, how do we relate, all right, how do we critique, how do we evaluate, how do we assess, all right, we have to base on the same philosophical principles, and Islamic philosophy has these principles, all right, they have this axiology and all that, but of course it has the Islamic flavor, or it is based on the Islamic worldview, all right, which many of us have it wrong. We think Islamic philosophy is just purely Greek. It is Islamic philosophy. Muslim philosophers were trying to Islamize, all right, Greek philosophy when they studied, when they translated the text, of course, with varying degrees of success. That's why, you know, we see that Ibn Sina still believe that, you know, the world is eternal, but with justification, with rational arguments. He, of course, as a Muslim, all right, he is not saying that the world, I'm just giving an example because there's a lot of misconception about this, because students also, you know, how I know is from my experiences with questions from students, all right, because when he talks about, especially in relation to the spiritual world or the intelligible world, all right, or the world of the angels, the angelic world, all right, he says that they are eternal, all right, because he talks about them as being necessary. But we forgot one thing. He qualified that necessity.
Excuse me, Doctor.
How many more
We
minutes?
have 2 minutes left.
Okay,
2
thank
minutes
you.
left.
Yeah, why he calls it a wajib, it's wajib bil ghair, necessary by the other. That means it is eternal only by the will of God, by the permission of Allah Ta'ala. So it is only necessary by God. It is not necessary as in itself, like the necessity, all right, as Allah is necessary. All right, so, and he has already divided, all right, wujud into two, all right, wajib and mumkin. All right, and of course, impossible, mumtani. But so, you know, the contingent never goes into the realm or domain of necessary. So that's why, okay, this is very basic to ontology, which we have, which, what do you call that, which we have to know, all right, because how are we going to teach if we are not convinced, all right, by the philosophical principles or the philosophical foundations, all right, if we ourselves say that's not our tradition, that's heretical, all right. So this is the problem that I wanted to bring about, which is important. Then, of course, teleology, all right, theology is the study of purpose, all right. So what is important here, all right, is I just want to mention to know something, the purpose or the goal or the end of the thing or the why, all right. So it deals with the thing, deals with the arts, with the sciences, all right, with action. So to know something completely, we need to understand its purpose. And the purpose of a thing determines what that thing is. Basically, its nature and its essence. So only with philosophy that we study that. And then, of course, you apply it to your own course. See what is the nature, if, for example, in sociology, do we teach, for example, I'm sure maybe in UIA we do, all right, but for example, what is the nature of man? What is the nature of human being before we talk about, you know, about society? We, you know, before we talk about the institutions, all right, we have to talk about what's the nature of man, nature of the human being. For example, since you're dealing with society, for example, all right, so the why is reducible finally to the definition of things. So we have to know the definition of things. So for Islamic philosophers, when you talk about al-insan, man, human being, so their definition, all right, when they talk about teleology, is al-insan hayawan natik, all right, rational animal or a rational being, because you know, they talk about rationality, all right, as the main source of knowledge. So that means that, you know, we know the human being as rational, and in the sense, all right, of course, rationality, that's in epistemology. What is the meaning of intellect? What is the function of intellect? It's not the same as in Greek philosophy, for example, all right, because the intellect, you know, the Muslims talk about akal, and the akal, afala yaqilun, all right, in the Quran, all right, the meaning is very different from just the nose, all right, of the Greek philosophers. So, and then everything that has an end, and that the end is what makes a thing fully itself, all right. So a human being, all right, if is fully itself when it uses its akal, all right. So, you know, I wanted to give about the what do you call the features of the particular features of Islamic philosophy, all right, that from Quran and Hadith, from the Islamic worldview. It talks about Tawheed, it talks about the spiritual world, not only about the physical world, and basically the discovery of reality, all right, which is the basic, what do you call, end of knowledge is hakika, the goal of Islamic philosophy, all right, the reality of things, or things as they are in themselves. And here I've collected the definitions of the Islamic philosophers, you know, showing, you know, if we can see, Islamization of the human sciences can be done, all right, because just now Prof was talking about we are interested in Islamization from the ontological, epistemological, axiological, and teleological principles of Islamic philosophy. So in terms of Islamization, all right, what we do, okay, will be the final statement. I'm very sorry, Siti. So we infuse the body of knowledge, all right, of sociology, psychology, political science, communication, all right, with elements and key concepts from the Islamic perspective, or those based on the Islamic worldview, by drawing from its own epistemological, ontological, metaphysical, axiological, and teleological principles. All right. So, you know, we replace, and, you know, I have listed some of the Western theories which we study in our social sciences and human sciences. So what we do is just infuse, all right, these principles from this oath, okay, or which are of course Islamic, from the Islamic perspective. So then we will get integration, because we also study from the Western worldview, and then we have the Islamization. Then we also have the relevantization, because when we talk about hedonism, we talk about atheism, agnosticism. These are contemporary issues, problems facing society, Muslim societies included. All right. So what do you call that? So it's also relevant, because we want to talk about issues, but we cannot talk about issues if we don't go back to the fundamentals. All right. So wallahu alam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Dr. Megawati Binti Morris, for the explanations and sharing. Now we have reached to the Q&A session. You can turn on your mic to ask, or you can also ask in the chat box, and I will try to read and pass them to our speaker. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum. May I ask a question?
Yes, Dr.
Yes.
Unggaran.
Yes. You mentioned about ontology in Islamic philosophy divided into physical and metaphysical, right?
Yes.
Now, how about a being that in the beginning is metaphysic in terms of according to the Islamic philosophy, but then becomes physical, like in Christianity or in Greek philosophy, logos becomes human, right? Or in modern era, maybe someone who has idea or logos, then to make a car, for example, then finally he makes a car. It means from metaphysical goes to physical. Then what is how does Islamic philosophy define this kind of being?
A car is a physical thing, right, Dr. Unggaran? So because we talk about the car basically as a physical thing. So the car, all right, has the efficient cost, all right. For example, the maker of the car, all right, is the maker of the car. So, but of course, that you talk about in relation to the physical causes. So how it relates to metaphysics is that if you go back to the chain of causes, finally, ultimately, then it goes to God, isn't it? Finally, he's the ultimate or the first cause. All right. So they would, I think in Islamic philosophy, that's not a problem. For example, a child, you talk about the parents producing the child, but then who produces the, from where the parents come from their parents, and from where their parents' parents come from, it's from their parents. All right. So ultimately,
my question is,
yes.
How does Islamic philosophy define something which is not metaphysics that becomes physical, which means in between, because there's a process. So the process also being. Then what does Islamic philosophy define this kind of being?
That because Islamic philosophy talks about change, about transformation. So then of course the car, I'm not sure I understand your question, but basically the car is a like you say, it's a physical object. All right. So there's no problem. It has no in the sense, all right. Maybe it's better if I give an example in terms of human being, because the human being is the best example. Is physical, both physical and metaphysical or spiritual.
Then I give example, logos. Okay, logos become human in Christian philosophy. Logos become human, which is becomes Jesus. Then how does Islamic philosophy define Jesus? Is he metaphysic or physics? Because he is logos who become human.
All right, I think that idea or that concept is relevant to Christian. All right, Christianity. All right, that Jesus became flesh, right? Isn't it?
Right. But
yeah.
it seems,
but in Islamic,
Arabi also mentioned about this, which means Islamic philosophy.
Yeah, because in terms of logos, all right, if you talk about reason or intellect, all right, the fact that that human beings have intellect, all right, the intellect is an important component, all right, in philosophy, and basically is intellect is the instrument of knowledge, and it is through knowledge, all right, that human beings can get closer to God. All right. How do you move? Okay, for example, we are a physical being here. How do you move closer to God? All right. When God has no time and space. So in Islamic philosophy, I can only speak, all right, because I teach that, but I don't teach Christian philosophy or Christianity. That when you talk about, so how do you get close to God if you are looking at human being as a physical being? All right, so in Islamic philosophy, you get closer to God through knowledge. All right, and of course, they have this union of, or the identification, all right, of our human knowledge, all right, with the the particular intellect, with the active intellect. All right, and the active intellect, which they identify with the angel Jibrail. All right, and so that the knowledge that Allah sends down, all right, to human beings through the archangel Jibrail, because where that is the revelation, and it's best exemplified in the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. okay, in terms of knowledge. So, and you know, that is how we get closer to God in the relation to reality. All right, to have the knowledge of reality, to have the knowledge of ma'rifatullah or ma'rifah billah, all right, knowledge of God and knowledge of ourselves, knowledge of the world. And so that's how, okay, we, what do you call that, get closer to God as a physical being. For the philosophers, they say that it is through knowledge and through the intellect. All right, and so therefore that's why, you know, that is going deeper into Islamic philosophy, especially in terms of its cosmology. All right, but Islamic philosophy does not have a problem, Dr. Ungaran, in relation to this concept of logos, all right, because for the Islamic philosophers, when you talk about logos, of course, they talk about the logos or the intellect of the Prophet Muhammad, all right, as having, they call it the al-akal, the Prophet having the acquired intellect, or the al-akal al-mustafad, all right, receiving the knowledge from the divine intellect. That means receiving knowledge which Allah Ta'ala has given the possibility of human beings to know. So, of course, you know, when you talk about Ibn Arabi and all that, that's, you know, going very much deeper into things which, you know, is beyond our scope here. All right, we're talking about logos of Jesus and all that. All right, but in terms of our discussion here in Islamic philosophy, the concept of logos is also important, but it relates to the Muhammad or the Prophet Muhammad, all right, in terms of the intellect as being the perfect, all right, the what do you call, the actual, all right, the actualized intellect, because we only have potential intellect. That's why we have to acquire knowledge, all right, to actualize that potentiality, to finally, all right, know about the realities of things, God, spiritual realities and everything else. All right, wallahu alam. I think that's the only way I know how to answer your question, Dr. Ungaran.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the first question. I think we have another question from Associate Professor Dr. Abdul Hamid. Please welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? Am I clear?
Salam. Yes,
How are you,
yes.
Doctor? MashaAllah. Thank you, MashaAllah, very much. Thank you very much. Doctor, I would like you to differentiate between knowledge, that is ma'rifah, and ilm, because in English they have no difference. They use both knowledge and ma'rifah, ilm and ma'rifah as knowledge. But in our kuliya, it is not ulum al-wahy. Why we call it ma'arif al-wahy? Like in Malay, we call it ulum wahyu. We don't call it ma'arif. In English, we say knowledge, but in Arabic, we have a difference between ma'rifah and ilm. So when talking about epistemology, is it ma'rifah or ilm? The differentiation between ma'rifah and ilm is of huge impact on how we use it as Muslims. Okay,
all right.
So,
Yeah, with my limited knowledge, all right, I try to answer the question, because ilm, all right, you see, the problem is that when we translate, right, you say that the translation is of marifah is the same, knowledge, but sometimes they also use gnosis, all right, to what do you call that, to differentiate between knowledge and what do you call ma'rifah. So knowledge is, ilm is knowledge and ma'rifah is gnosis. All right. As far as I know, all right, in terms of ilm, all right, it's knowledge, knowing, but ma'rifah is understanding. It's just that we just don't know. We not only know, but we also understand. All right. So that's why when you talk about ma'rifah, all right, it is ma'rifah billah. That means you know, understand, but it is not through our own, all right, understanding, but it's from God's understanding, all right, God's understanding of himself, not our human intellect knowing him, all right. So therefore, and you know, if I think that would be the differentiation, okay, in terms of knowing and understanding, or ilm and ma'rifah, all right. And that's why you say the other thing is that when you talk about ilm, sometimes they also use it as meaning science, all right. They translate it as science, you know, like the science of philosophy. Sometimes you see the translation, all right, meaning that usually science, all right, has to fulfill certain conditions, all right, certain they have certain characteristics.
What's happening here? What's happening just now?
For example, you know, science, all right, must have a body of knowledge, all right, and it has to have its aims and objectives, and then it has its own terminology, all right, then only you would consider it as a science, all right. But of course now, okay, this is a very important question, but it needs a lot of elaboration also, because science now, especially now, because modern science has hijacked the term, all right, like as though that what they are doing is science. And other, for example, the religious sciences are not considered science, because they have taken science to mean as knowledge which are, you know, using the scientific method, which basically is empirical method. So they have removed metaphysics from it. So it is what do you call that, a problem, all right. So, and another thing about ma'rifah, all right, at least from the Islamic intellectual tradition, when we talk about ma'rifah also, we talk about just the we also talk about the intellect, all right, not in terms of just having the ability, all right, to know about rational, all right, to knowledge rationally, but also in terms of that direct knowledge coming from on high, all right. They call al-im al-laduni. That means direct knowledge that Allah Ta'ala has given to us, all right. And so therefore it has to do also with tazkiyatun nafs, like I didn't get to show in relation to Islamic philosophy also. There's this activity, all right, or component of spirituality in Islamic philosophy, where you talk about having, about the virtues, having a good soul, all right, about the about akhlaq. So that would I consider the differences, all right.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I'm sorry we have reached the time. We have come to the end of the program. So on behalf of the organizer, I would like to thank the Yang Berbahagia Assistant Professor Dr. Megawati Binti Morris for inspiring us, especially the young researchers and students. We hope that everyone will embrace and uphold your words of wisdom in their journey to be successful academics and researchers in the future. I would like to take this opportunity to apologize for my shortcomings in hosting this session. I wish the organizers, the participants, all the best, and may Allah bless our effort in this journey of knowledge. Before we end, let's turn on our camera for the photography session. Inshallah, I will count up to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And let's end with Tasbih Kafarah and Surah Al-Asr. Thank you, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
السلام ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.